Before I start to fill you in on a few items that you might expect to hear about ESPN, I was reminded tonight as we drove up to the campus, the Forrestal Center is right nearby. This is the only place in America that I can say this, but the Forrestal Center has played a very integral part in the beginning of ESPN. Everybody knows about Bristol, Connecticut. Everybody knows that they're worldwide and so on, but not a lot of people realize that as we were running out of money early on and looking for some investments, some help, anything, we called a company over in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and the gentleman that I had to speak with wasn't there that day. And you must remember in 1978, satellites and internet and all the things we have today, they were not very well known. So every time we talk to somebody, we talk about satellites and we talk about this great thing that was going to happen, it was kind of right over their head. They had no idea. So the gentleman that I called was not there the next day. They asked me to call back the next day. He listened for 10 minutes. I'm pouring out this wonderful idea, and he didn't acknowledge. I didn't know if he was dead down the line or what. Turns out he had been visiting the day before with RCA Americom at the Forrestal Center. They were going to do some financing with. And he said, I understand exactly what you're saying. Can you come down tomorrow? And that's the way we got our very, very first few scraps of dollars. And they came from right next to the Princeton campus. The juxtaposition was kind of intriguing to us. But anyway, thank you all for coming out tonight. And I expect that, so let me ask first, does anybody here not know what ESPN is? I can do that. Let me ask you, well, you're all too young. I can't even ask the other part of the question. How many remember the very first words that were spoken on the air of ESPN? Obviously you can't, because that was coming up on 30 years next year. But just because you missed it, I can repeat them for you because they are etched. They are really etched in my mind. If you're a fan, what you'll see in the next minutes, hours, and days to follow may convince you you've gone to sports heaven. Beyond that blue horizon is a limitless world of sports, and right now, you're standing on the edge of tomorrow. Sports, 24 hours a day, with ESPN, the Total Sports Cable Network. Wow, what a bold and brassy statement that was. The networks were the kings of the world back then and controlled 93% of all the television viewing in the United States. And here's a little guy from the south side of Chicago, from the wilds of Connecticut, making these grand statements and putting it up on a satellite. And I like to say, for when there are audiences where there are people who were around in those days, and I asked that question, I always thought my family in Peoria were the only people watching that night. Turns out there were a few more. Turns out it was a pretty interesting idea. But back in 1979, in September when we launched, there were no 24-hour networks. No CNN. Common misconception, CNN started in January of 1980, right after ESPN in September of 1979.